I'm Darrell from Exchange Blu-ray Imports. Welcome back to 1080 Passport, the show where we get a bunch of stuff in the mail and open it up and see what came in. There's a bunch of Blu-rays that came in the mail yesterday, so we're going to go ahead and pop these boxes open and see what we got. All right? Okay, so this is from Germany. First, we have a restock of Werner Herzog's Happy People, A Year in the Taiga. It's a documentary he made. Follows one character in particular, but mostly it's some folks living up in a certain area of Siberia. And it's kind of funny because I hesitated to order this for a long time because the way that people were talking about it on forums, it kind of led me to believe that it wasn't English friendly. Like people would say, oh, I wish that Russian guy was subtitled. I was like, oh man, is this going to be a situation where I'm going to buy this and then I'm not going to be able to sell it because, you know, you got people talking in Russian and not being subtitled. But it turns out that wasn't an issue because what happened was it got included in a really good sale. So I said, it's super cheap. I'll buy one and I'll see. And what happens is almost the entire movie, you know, they'll start talking Russian and then after a couple of seconds, the person, they're kind of like overdubbed and it'll kind of come in and they'll speak in English. So it's completely English friendly, which is great. So if you are into Herzog, especially his documentary films, this is one. Next up, have As Good as It Gets. It's a James L. Brooks movie. Some of you might know James L. Brooks. If you are old and washed like me, you remember the TV show Taxi. He's the creator of Taxi. He's done other things too. They don't come to mind. I want to say, I always get Terms of Endearment and Tender Mercies mixed up. He did one of those. But yes, As Good as It Gets. Jack Nicholson, Helen Hunt, multiple Oscar nominations. I believe Hunt actually won an Oscar for her performance in the film. This is a movie that got released by Twilight Time in the United States. It's a very popular title. It is since sold out, and there does not appear to be a domestic release on the horizon. So I figured, oh, Price is Right. It's a popular movie. Jack Nicholson, people love Jack Nicholson. It's got a name director, name stars. It's going to sell. Also, a new addition to the shop's inventory is the 1976 version of King Kong. It's directed by, I'm going to butcher this name, John Guillermin. Story about this movie. When I was a small child, when this movie came out in Chile, I was, I guess at the time, probably 3 or 4 years old. If any of you had seen the movie poster that accompanied this release, there is a very large, very menacing looking King Kong. He's splayed out and he's got you know, I guess it's Jessica Lange in his hand, and just looks really scary. Well, when I was a small child, we went to the movies and I went running around a corner and I ran smack into a cardboard cutout of that King Kong, and he scared the living daylights out of me. And even now, 40 years later, seeing that image, it really does a number on me. I have a very hard time looking at that image. It freaks me out. So, yeah, it's a pleasant little story about King Kong 76. So let's see what else we have. Oh, so I guess I went ahead and I took a flyer on this just to make sure it was something that I could possibly add. I believe Criterion released it in the United States, and when Studio Canal kind of took their rights and left, this was one of the movies that went away. I believe it's going to be in Artificial Eye's new Melville box set. I could be wrong, but I think it's going to be in there. But yeah, so it seemed like the kind of thing where I ordered one of them. I'll take a look at it, make sure it's English friendly, make sure everything's cool. And yeah, if it checks out, it'll be something that I add to the store's inventory just to give people an option. You know, maybe they got most of the Melville Criterions before they dried up, but maybe they didn't get this one. Maybe they, you know, so they don't want to buy the Artificial Eye box set because, you know, some of that stuff they have, but not all of it. You know, at foreign exchange Blu-ray imports, it's always good to give people lots of options. More options are better. Let's see. Speaking of more options, there's a couple of titles that I have carried in the store in the past. I've carried the French versions of these films. They are French films by the director Marcel Carné. The screenwriter for both of these films, Jacques Prévert, in some circles is even given equal, if not greater, status as the auteur of these films. He is the sort of the great voice of the poetic realism movement, which was a major force in French filmmaking during the late 30s. You know, and there's people that take, you know, that point to Carné's output, you know, without Jacques Prévert, and they say, well, you see, you know, there's certainly, I mean, there's some good films there, but he certainly wasn't consistently hitting at that level the way that he was when he was making films like these. And of course, both of these star Jean Gabin, the face of poetic realism. For folks in America that might not necessarily be aware of the whole poetic realism movement that happened in the late 30s, it was a very strong precursor and an influence on the American film noir movement. Obviously, there's not a direct correlation. There's factors involved. So it's not like, oh, this just became, you know, I'm not saying like film noir is like poetic realism 2.0. That's ridiculous. But it is definitely something that was a precursor to it and was an influence on it to a certain extent. So if you're a fan of American film noir films, and, you know, this probably, if you've not heard of these films or not seen them, definitely worth checking out. Let's see. Oh, and another movie that I carry multiple copies of is Louis Buñuel's The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. With a lot of these, like with the two Marcel Carné movies, the thing is that I carry the French versions, or in this case, I carry the British version, but it's just much more expensive. And these are English-friendly releases. I've actually been restocking this one, so I've had it multiple times before. The discs are identical. I've put in the British disc, played it for a few minutes, taken it out, put in this German disc, and had it pick up exactly where it left off. So the discs are identical. The only difference is that this German version, obviously people prefer the British artwork. They like the original, you know, the art from the poster. But this thing, like, I sell this for like $10, $11, you know, whereas the only way I was ever able to get Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, the British version, into the store for under $20 was because Amazon UK had some sort of thing where it's like, we were named the #1 e-tailer in the UK, so spend 50 pounds and we'll give you 10 pounds off. So I basically, in order to get the British one in under $20, I had to subsidize it with that $10 10-pound off coupon. So realistically, this is basically half the price. And, you know, some people out there would rather have half their money as opposed to, you know, having the British artwork. You know, takes all kinds. 4X Blue is here for everybody. If you want the British one, I'll do it as a special request. Other than that, whenever, I mean, this gets included in sales all the time. That's why I can offer it for $10 or $11. And last one from this shipment is a film called The Net by, who's the director? It's Irwin Winkler is the director. This is one of the early sort of leading roles for Sandra Bullock. I put it in the 90s section because it is a quintessential 90s movie. It's the kind of film that you watch it and the tech feels very 90s-tastic. So if you have nostalgia for like old Mac computers and flip phones and stuff like that, this is a movie for you. So. And incidentally, I recently had someone who worked on this film in the store, so that was pretty neat. After he came by the store, I looked up his filmography, and I found this in there, and I was like, oh, okay, I think people would be interested in that movie. And the thing with this one is that I guess Sony has included it as part of their collector's choice line, which they sell a burned on-demand disc for something like $27. It's ridiculous. Most people are like, why would I spend $27 for an on-demand disc when this disc is Region A compatible? I mean, yes, it doesn't have the English name on it, but it's Region A compatible. I think I sell these for like $12. And it's a pressed disc, it's not a burned disc, you know. Those of you that know there's a difference. So yeah, The Net, Sandra Bullock, 90s-tastic. Let's see what else came in. This looks like it is from the UK. And oh, this is Perfect Blue by Satoshi Kon. This is a very popular and influential anime film. I initially heard about it because a couple of my online customers had asked me about doing it as a possible request. And I was kind of surprised because they had each sort of independently of each other, they had asked it. So that was the first sort of indicator that, oh, wow, that's interesting. And then, of course, when it came in, I immediately had multiple people reach out to me and say, oh, hey, I saw that you got Perfect Blue. It's like, I'm very interested in that. So, yeah, this is a title that, you know, has been a pretty decent seller. Apparently, there's a lot of American filmmakers that have been very influenced by this director and his films, this film in particular. I know the name always gets brought up is Darren Aronofsky, but there are others that either have openly said they're influenced by his films, or by looking at the work of other filmmakers, you can definitely tell that there's an influence there. I know I recently was informed by one of my regulars that I guess his film, Three Godfathers, is going to be getting an Australian release. So if we can make that work price-wise, then we'll see about possibly bringing that in. I know he's got another film, Paprika, but that got a domestic release. So yeah, I wouldn't be carrying that. All right, so that's very exciting. Like I said, that always does really well. Next up, wow, that was pretty fast. I didn't think this was going to be coming that soon. So, another shipment from the UK. We have first artificialized release of Francois Truffaut's Shoot the Piano Player. Now, this is part of a much larger Francois Truffaut box set. You can buy the box set, and you know, but there's a lot of people that are like, well, like half the movies in the box set have been released by Criterion, and I don't want the overlap. So to this point, I think there's maybe only 2 or 3 movies in the box set that have not been released by Criterion. So that's why I just sell them as standalones. And then honestly, there are people who, on the one hand, there are people that are completists that are like, I have Truffaut in my collection, I'm getting everything. And then there are other people who are like, you know, I like Truffaut's first few movies, but then at a certain point I kind of drop off. And, you know, I definitely feel like there's people out there that are like, no, I want 400 Blows, I want Shoot the Piano Player, I want Jules and Jim, you know, maybe I want like Day for Night and a couple of other movies beyond that. But, you know, there's a lot of people out there that feel as though as his filmmaking became, for lack of a better term, more mainstream, they're just not as interested. But, you know, to each their own. Like I said, here at Forks Blue, we try to accommodate everybody. So what else do we have? Oh, we have another animated film. This is Animal Farm by the British animators Hallis and Batchelor. I have also carried another Blu-ray that contains a lot of their short films kind of put together. Of course, this is based on the famous book by George Orwell, which is, I think, generally understood as an allegory for the Soviet Revolution. Yeah, so this is a film that was made in the UK, I want to say like in the 50s. So yeah, it's an early important film in animated film history. So yeah, it's really cool. All right, so next up, oh man, that's the one that's loose. That sucks. Oh well. At least it's going to be a reference copy. It's not going to be something that gets sold, so don't worry. So this is interesting. This is a British TV show called Utopia. I think in America, it is probably best known because a few years ago, there was some talk that David Fincher was going to adapt it and do it as a series in America, I believe for HBO. And so I think that's how I initially had somebody ask me about if I was going to carry it, and they were interested in it because of the fact that they had heard about Fincher doing it. And this is an instance of where the reason why it held off was because of the fact that it is, you know, this disc in particular is, and I believe most of the releases of this are 1080i 50. I've only recently started to offer Blu-rays that are encoded at 50 frames, just because of the fact that a lot of folks don't happen to know offhand if their setup at home can convert 50 frames to 60 frames on the fly. And that's the problem, is that the reason why I've resisted in the past is because I didn't want to sell something that was 1080i 50 to somebody and have them get home and be like, oh, well, you know, I bought this Blu-ray and I put it in and then it wouldn't play. And it's like, yeah, because your system, whether it's your Blu-ray player or your television, they don't support converting 50 frames to 60. Here in the store, the AV setup that I have, it does support that. So what I decided at a certain point to do was that I would order a couple of titles that are 1080i 50, and I would have reference copies so I could show them to people. Like, for instance, if you come into the store and you're curious about this, I can put it on for you. You can get a sense of what it looks like. But I'm not going to carry it as inventory in the store. You're not going to be able to walk in here and walk out of it with the same day. There's going to be an intermediary step where you say, okay, yeah, this seems cool. Order one for me, like I normally do with most requests. And the reason why I did that is because I felt like if I had it in stock, if I had it as inventory, I would have customers who would come in, grab it, and then just kind of in the heat of the moment, I'd forget to say to them, hey, look, do you know for a fact that your setup is going to work with 50 frames? Or, you know, might have a situation where somebody would be like, honestly, I don't know, but, you know, this is a great price. I don't want to miss out on this. Or I heard that, you know, supplies, for whatever reason, somebody might just be like, oh, I'll just take a chance on it. And I didn't like the sort of logical conclusion that you could end up with. Is I don't want to have a situation where people are buying things and then taking a shot and seeing if it plays or it doesn't play, and then coming back and expecting a refund if it doesn't play. Because let's be honest, I mean, you've had some really awesome releases in the UK the last year or two. You look at like Arrow's Decalogue box, or you look at BFI's Alan Clark box set. Those are massive box sets, and they're very expensive. And I just, you know, I just don't want to envision a scenario whereby somebody comes in here, buys a Alan Clark box set for 150 bucks and takes it home and it doesn't play, and then comes back and expects me to hand them $150. It's just, I can't do that. And then get stuck with an open box set. I mean, I would take a bath on that. So that's the reason why to this point I hadn't done 1080i 50 at all, and only just recently have decided, okay, I'm willing to do it, but only with that sort of intermediary step, so that everybody is clear that, okay, this is the situation. You know, and I even have discs in the store which I've actually loaned out so that people can verify their setup. Recently, one of the shop's followers on Facebook, who's in the physical media industry, he offered to actually make me like a tester disc so that people could verify this, and then I could just make copies of it and give them out to people and not have to worry about, you know, giving somebody a disc and taking a deposit, or having to harangue them to get it back or anything like that. I could just burn copies of this tester disc and let them take it, and then that way they can verify that their setup works for 50 frames and then not have to deal with any other stuff. And then once they know that for a fact that it does work, then that opens up additional things. Like, for instance, to this point, I've added the 2 BFI Ken Russell sets. Those are both 50 frames, and also King Hu's martial arts film Come Drink With Me is released in Germany, but it's in 50 frames. You know, that's one of those things where that's a really awesome title, and I'm sure people would want to be able to take advantage of watching it. But unfortunately, I think I think it was Ryan from Criterion Cast mentioned that he had gotten it, I think, from iTunes, and for instance, their version only had like the English dub, whereas on the German Blu-ray it has the original audio and it has English subtitles, which I believe for most people would be the preferred way to watch that film, would be to see it with the original audio and the English subtitles rather than with an English dub. So, you know, as long as your setup is compatible with 50 frames, you can do that. But, you know, I don't want to sell you a copy of it and then have you come back a few days later and expect a refund. So, all right, so that's Utopia. Very exciting arrival. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up here with the last shipment that came in. And this is a big one. Fortunately, it sounds like something's loose. So one of these discs is loose, unfortunately, which is a major drag. All right, so this is a shipment from France. Awesome. Love those. So this is something I took a flyer on. This is another Twilight Time title that is out of print in the United States. It's Drums Along the Mohawk by John Ford. It's released by Sidonis, I believe is the name of the company. This is one of those things where it's normally when I take a flyer on stuff, it's a little bit more inexpensive, but I think this, to me, it felt worth the risk. So I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna make sure there's no issues with like forced subtitles or anything, and hopefully we can actually get this out on the floor. But yeah, no, it's for research and development. Next up, we have a restock of 3 Seats for the 26th. It is, I believe, the final film by Jacques Demy, who passed away way too young. This is a movie where Yves Montand plays Yves Montand in a stage version of his life, which is pretty meta. And the opening musical number is incredible, and it is about as 80s-tastic as it gets. It feels like, it's like, I'm so excited by the Pointer Sisters. It's pretty spectacular. All right. So this is a title that's being added to the inventory for the first time. It's called The Song of Songs by Ruben Mamoulian, and it stars Marlene Dietrich. Dietrich plays this young country girl who comes to live with, I want to say it's her aunt in the city, and she immediately captivates this this young sculptor who lives across from where she stays at I think it's her aunt's bookstore. And so then, of course, the sculptor, he wants her to model for him, and you know, things go on from there. I don't want to get too spoilery, but yeah, no, this is Ruben Mamoulian. It's really cool. So yeah, it's a good movie. I enjoyed it. Let's see, what is next? Another restock. This is The Servant by Joseph Losey. Stars Dirk Bogarde. I haven't had a chance to watch this one yet, but it always sells really well. So it's pretty good. And I think all of the extras on this one are English friendly, which is rare for these, but that's cool. All right, so another one of these Marlene Dietrich movies from France is, I think this is called The Flame of New Orleans, and it's directed by René Clair. And in this one, let me see, Marlene Dietrich is, she's kind of being chased after by these two guys. One of them is like this wealthy kind of fuddy-duddy guy. I think his name is Roland Young. I believe he appeared in a lot of like the Preston Sturges movies. And the other one is this almost kind of like poor man's Clark Gable, who's kind of like this sailor. So, you know, you have the usual sort of romantic comedy kind of situations. Next, and I think this is the loose one. Yeah, well, that's good because I was going to make a reference copy anyway. This is a new addition to the store's inventory. It's a movie called Boys School, and it's directed by this French filmmaker named Christian Jacques. Christian Jacques is not his given name. Apparently, when he was first getting into show business, he and a friend, they made a pact, and they said whichever one of us becomes famous first is going to use the name Christian Jacques. And I guess one of them was named Christian and one of them was named Jacques. So when Christian Jacques became a prominent French filmmaker, he took the name. I've seen this film described as being sort of like Goonies or like the Harry Potter movies, but also apparently Erich von Stroheim is one of the major characters in the film. He plays like one of the members of the faculty who's kind of creepy and always sort of lurking in the background and always, you know, doing suspicious things. And Michel Simon plays one of the members of the faculty also. So it's pretty star-studded. You know, the fact you get von Stroheim acting and you get Michel Simon, one of the great French actors of the 30s, in this film. So that's pretty cool. And next up is another Joseph Losey film. I got 2 copies of this because I've carried this in the store before. However, I had someone who actually wanted it so bad that they bought my reference copy. I don't often do that. Every once in a while, if somebody really wants something and I don't have it in stock, I'll be like, okay, well, you know, as long as you're willing to pay the normal price for it, I will sell you the reference copy. So I had that happen. So that's why I got 2 copies of Accident by Joseph Losey. So yeah, Joseph Losey fans will be very happy today. And lastly is another sort of R&D title that I'm kind of checking out, making sure everything is okay with. It is called, I'm not going to try to pronounce this. I'm assuming the title is translated as The Black Monocle. One of my regulars in the store recently, last time he was in, he mentioned this movie as something that he was interested in. So I looked into it. It was part of a sale. I was able to bring it in at a good price. So I'm going to check it out and make sure everything's good. And if it checks out, then I'm sure he'll be first in line to get one. All right, so that's it for today's installment of 1080 Passport. Had a lot of stuff come in. It was very exciting. Looking forward to getting all the stuff processed and out on the floor for you guys to get your hands on. If you enjoyed this video or you think you know someone that would enjoy it, please like and subscribe and share the videos, pass it on, help to spread the word. So yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much. See you next time.